Horror Nights presents 5 creepy and disturbing true roommate horror stories. Number 5. Malcolm Brown and Kyle Wilson. Malcolm Brown and Kyle Wilson met on the internet in 2009 on a website that connects roommates. Brown, who was moving to Seattle from Kansas City, had found the apartment, and he was the one who posted the ad. Wilson emailed Brown and told him that he was moving from Vancouver, British Columbia, to Seattle, and after exchanging a few emails, Brown agreed to let Wilson move in. By all accounts, the roommates got along, but they were not friends. They shared vastly different interests, so they didn't spend much time together. However, the friends and family of both Brown and Wilson said that neither spoke ill of the other. In fact, it was quite the opposite. On November 13, 2009, after living with each other for over 7 months, the police were called because of a foul odor coming from the apartment. They got the super to open the door, and inside, they found Brown sitting in an armchair, and his chin and chest were covered in blood. Wilson, on the other hand, was alive. He was sitting in his own urine and feces on the couch. He was facing Brown's dead body, and he was in a catatonic state. The emergency responders tried to rouse him, but they couldn't. A stretcher was brought in. Wilson was placed on it, and he was taken to the hospital. He was washed and examined, and nothing was physically wrong with him except that he was incredibly dehydrated. Yet he couldn't be awoken from his catatonic state. It's believed that he went into the state around the same time that Brown died, 3 days before they were found. As for Brown, he died from massive blood loss after his tongue had been yanked out of his head. What's strange is that the tongue has never been found. Also, Brown had no defensive wounds. No one knows exactly what happened on that horrible night, but Wilson wasn't the one who yanked the tongue out because he didn't have a speck of blood on him. Brown died 5 years later without ever coming out of his catatonic state. Number 4. Lena Handal and Danielle Elliott. In 1982, Lena Handal was finishing up her last year of master's at the University of North Carolina, and she needed her roommate. Her last one had dropped out of school, and she put an ad up on the school's roommate board. Shortly after posting it, Handal got a call from a woman who identified herself as Danielle Elliott, and she came to the apartment a few hours later. Handal showed her around, and Elliott seemed nice enough, so Handal agreed to let her move in. Elliott said she didn't have much stuff because her belongings were being shipped down from Vermont, and she said that she had been sleeping on an air mattress. She also said that she could only pay in cash at the moment. Since she had the rent and the deposit on her, Handal didn't see a problem with it. Handal handed over the keys, and then Elliott took her large camping backpack and went into her room and closed the door. Hours later, Handal didn't see Elliott. When Handal left for her job as a bartender, she called out to say goodbye, but didn't hear a response. When Handal returned home at 3 a.m., she didn't see or hear Elliott, and she went to bed. The next day, which was a Saturday, Handal didn't see or hear Elliott at all, and her door remained closed. Handal was tempted to knock on the door, but a roommate that she never saw or never heard was actually the ideal roommate. When Handal left for work again on Saturday, she called out to say goodbye and again heard nothing. On the Sunday, Handal still had not heard or seen Elliott, but there was an odd smell coming from the room. Handal decided to knock on the door, and after she didn't hear a response, she announced she was coming into the room because she feared for Elliott's safety. When she opened the door, she was immediately hit with the unmistakable smell of death. Handal had never smelled it before, but something deep in her biology recognized it. Through the opening in the door, she could see the legs of a man wearing jeans. Immediately, Handal turned away and threw up. She then called the police in tears. At the police station, Handal told them about Elliott, but she didn't know much about her. However, it soon became clear that the police didn't believe her. They showed her a picture of the body that was found in the room. It was a man in his 30s, and he had been stabbed in the neck and then a pentagram carved into his chest. Missing was the right pinky finger. Then they showed her the walls, and on them were weird symbols written in blood. Suddenly, the smell of the body came back to her, and she started dry heaving in the interrogation room. Then the detectives accused her of committing the murder and making up the fake roommate. After all, the only fingerprints in the room where the body was found belonged to Handal, as were the only fingerprints on the murder weapon, which was a carving knife taken from the kitchen. Handal denied the murder of the man, who was identified as 38-year-old Joseph Ramsey, and said she washed and cleaned the room for the new roommate and the knife belonged to her. That's why her fingerprints were everywhere. When she went to trial, the evidence was overwhelming. When her lawyer, Larry Brown, was preparing for Handal's case, he had lunch with his friend from law school, who was an assistant district attorney in Miami, and his friend said he remembered a similar case like that coming across someone's desk 4 years earlier. So Brown began searching through the microfilm of old copies of the Miami Herald, and it turned out that 4 years to the day of Ramsey's murder, another man was murdered and had a pentagram carved into his chest. The woman who was convicted for the murder, Maria Sanchez, said that a mysterious roommate who had just moved in was responsible. Brown tried to get the case submitted as evidence, however the judge would not allow it. Handal was found guilty, and she was sentenced to life in prison. Then in 1986, 4 years to the day after the murder, Brown collected as many newspapers as he could, and he found out that in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, there was another man murdered. He had a pentagram carved into his chest, and the roommate had been arrested. This time, Brown went to the press, and the story was picked up nationally. The new roommate, Kate Weston, had an eerily similar story to Handal and Sanchez's. When Brown made an appeal for Handal and Sanchez, he pointed out that the murder in Baton Rouge included details that weren't printed in any of the newspapers, and that was the writing on the wall and the missing pinky fingers. In court, he argued how did 3 different people who lived in different areas of the country all commit identical crimes. As a result, Weston wasn't charged, and Handal and Sanchez had their convictions overturned. After 1986, the murders seem to have stopped as strangely as they started. However, some people are not entirely convinced that Handal, Sanchez, and Weston are innocent. Although no connection between the women was ever found, some believe that the women were part of an evil coven and the murders were ritualistic. Number 3. Sasha Ryerson and Lisa Saunders. On the night of December 20, 2015, 20-year-old Sasha Ryerson went out with her boyfriend to the campus bar at the University of Windsor in Canada. Later that night, Ryerson snuck into her dorm that she shared with her roommate, Lisa Saunders, and quietly grabbed everything she needed. The room was dark, but it looked like Saunders was in bed. In less than 2 minutes, Ryerson quietly gathered her stuff and she was gone. The next afternoon, Ryerson returned to her dorm room and Saunders was gone. Ryerson texted her roommate, but she didn't hear back. When she didn't see or hear from Saunders for 2 days, she got in contact with her parents on Facebook and they called the police. A search was launched, but no trace of Saunders could be found. It's believed that she was taken out of the room in her suitcase, the only thing that was missing from the room. Then, a month to the day of Saunders' disappearance, Ryerson got an email from someone named John Doe with the subject line, "You're welcome." Saunders opened the email, and there was a video embedded in it. It started to play, and suddenly Saunders couldn't catch her breath. The video was taken inside her dorm room, and it appears that it was recorded on a GoPro that was attached to someone's forehead. In the video, Saunders sits up in bed and says, "Who's there?" In a mechanical voice that was clearly altered to hide the identity of the person, the cameraman says, "If you scream, I'll cut out your voice box before you get out another." "What do you want? Who are you? Get out of here," Saunders shouted. The man jumped on her and covered her mouth. Ryerson could see the fear in Saunders' eyes. She tried to say something, and the man moved his hand to allow her to speak. "Please, just go. My roommate just texted me and she'll be home any minute." Just then, you can hear the keys turn in the lock of the door. "If you say anything, you'll both die." And then the door opened. Before Ryerson got into the room, the man crouched down at the end of Saunders' bed and hid behind a laundry hamper. Then Ryerson watched herself on the video, gathering her stuff up and leaving. Once she does, the man attacks Saunders, and the recording comes to an abrupt end. Ryerson immediately notified the police, and the video was analyzed. However, it didn't bring any leads, and what happened to Saunders and the identity of the cameraman remain a mystery. Number 2. Gregg Ploutarcho and Connor Botteril. In 2014, 29-year-old Gregg Ploutarcho had a new roommate move in, Connor Botteril, after his old roommate got married and moved out. Ploutarcho thought he recognized Botteril, but Botteril said they had never met before. A month after Botteril moved in, Ploutarcho fell ill with a terrible flu-like sickness. A month after recovering from that, he got really sick again, and this time his skin turned yellow. So he went to the hospital and they ran tests. Sadly, the results were not good. Ploutarcho was diagnosed with hepatitis E, and he was HIV positive. Ploutarcho was shocked. He had no idea how he could have gotten either disease. They asked him if he had come down with a cold recently, and he said about a month ago he did. They asked him if he was in a sexual relationship. He said that he had started seeing a girl named Laura about 2 months ago, about 2 weeks after his roommate moved in. He said that they met on the internet and it had mostly just been hookups, but they wore a condom every time. Ploutarcho spent a few days in the hospital, and when he finally did make it back to the apartment, he found Botteril had moved out. On the coffee table in the living room was a large manila envelope. On it, in block letters, it said, "15 years ago, you teased me and my brother so much that he killed himself. You didn't even recognize me, and I was living with you under the same roof. Good luck with the rest of your life." Inside the envelope was a DVD, and Ploutarcho put the disc in the player. It was recorded on a GoPro that was on Botteril's chest. In view of the camera was a laptop with 2 browsers open. One was the dating site that Ploutarcho had belonged to where he met Laura, and the other one he didn't recognize. He looked closely, and he realized Botteril was typing the messages that Laura had sent him. On the other site, Botteril was pretending to be Ploutarcho, and he was talking to Laura. Botteril had catfished both of them, and the site Laura was using was specifically made for people with HIV and AIDS. The video then cuts to another scene, and it was a pair of hands using a needle to punch holes in the condom. If that wasn't bad enough, The video then showed why Ploutarcho had contracted hepatitis E, and that was because there were multiple clips of Botteril putting Ploutarcho's toothbrush in the toilet and brushing the sides of the bowl. Ploutarcho went to the police with the video, but there was no record of Connor Botteril anywhere. It's believed he used a fake name. Also, while Botteril recorded what he did to Ploutarcho, his face is never shown. The police also pressed Ploutarcho if he remembered someone committing suicide from his childhood, but he couldn't remember anyone. Whether Ploutarcho actually was the target of a bully getting revenge or just a horrible case of mistaken identity is unknown. Number 1. Frank McDonald and Courtney Kelly. In 2004, 23-year-old Courtney Kelly got an excellent job with a law firm in New York City. However, even with her decent salary, she knew that she'd still have a problem getting the apartment she wanted because of how expensive New York was. She found an ad online posted by Frank McDonald, who was looking for a roommate. Kelly contacted him, and they exchanged emails. Kelly went to meet McDonald, and at first, she thought that he was a little creepy. McDonald said that he was a doctor and worked long hours, so he wasn't around much. The apartment was also beautiful, and Kelly could afford the rent. Plus, it was only a short walk or even shorter subway ride to work, so she took it. Kelly and McDonald got along well instantly. Kelly told him all about her past, about how her mom passed away just after she graduated high school, and she didn't know her dad. Also, she didn't have many friends, and she didn't know anyone in the city. Frank, on the other hand, was falling in love with Kelly. Kelly was completely unaware of this, but one thing she knew was that she wasn't romantically interested in Frank. He was more of a brother. 4 months after moving in, both were home and decided to crack open a bottle of wine, which led to 1.5 more. That's when McDonald tried to kiss Kelly. She turned him down, went to her room and locked the door. The next day, McDonald sheepishly apologized, and Kelly accepted it. She loved what they had and wanted to keep living that way. McDonald agreed, and Kelly thought that was the end of it. Then, a week later, Kelly was pulled into the Human Resources office at work. She had been fired for improper use of her email. Kelly was shocked, and she claimed that she never did anything like that. They showed her a file, and there were emails that were racist and sexually illicit, and they were sent to all the firm's partners. Kelly denied that she had anything to do with the emails. Nevertheless, she was told to leave her security passes, and she was escorted out of the building. Kelly knew who was responsible for the emails, and she went straight home. She couldn't believe that McDonald would do something like this. She thought that she was literally going to kill him when she walked into the apartment and started yelling. When she did, he pulled a stun gun and zapped her. She fell to the floor, and before she could do anything, McDonald stuck a needle in her neck. Soon she was unconscious. Kelly didn't know how long she was out before she woke up. However, she was groggy and all her limbs were sore. She tried to move her limbs, but she had no sensation. She looked around and realized that she was in McDonald's room. When she looked to see why she was so sore and tried to scream, but still she was too groggy, and she fainted. When she came to again, she thought that it was all a bad dream, that her arms and legs had been amputated. But she was wrong. They were gone. McDonald came into the room. He explained that he always wanted her, and now he would always have her. Kelly screamed, but it did no good. This would be Kelly's reality for the next 10 years. She only left the room when McDonald carried her to the washroom. Otherwise, she was confined to the bedroom where she watched TV and was used by McDonald at his will. Her nightmare finally came to an end when a private investigator came looking for her. Kelly's long-lost father was trying to track her down, and this was her last recorded address. When the private eye talked to McDonald, he knew something was wrong. The private eye got the police involved, and they found Kelly. McDonald was arrested and sentenced to life. Kelly lives in a long-term facility where her father visits her every day. Subscribe for more.